of all, good morning and welcome to our third instalment of our Challenge Partners virtual leadership development sessions. My name's Aziz. I've worked for Challenge Partners in our partnership team, which is basically supporting schools around the country to help mobilise knowledge and continue in our mission to provide peer support and knowledge exchange. And in that vein, I'd just like to, first of all, thank Kate Frood, who's very kindly agreed to present this morning on their work on a cross-curricular approach to the primary curriculum. I know that they've done some fantastic work kind of pre-COVID on this. Like I said, Kate's very kindly agreed to share some of that work with us this morning. So thank you very much, Kate. Before we get going, just to run through some of the house rules. As I can see, very kindly, people have started to introduce themselves on the chat function, which is great. If you haven't done that already, just to recap, there is a text or a chat function, which is the small text box in the top right-hand corner of your screen. You may have you've hopefully seen the agenda for today's session. There will be time, natural pauses within the presentation and opportunities for questions. So please do use that chat function primarily to record any thoughts or musings that you may have, any questions for Kate or the wider group, and we will come back to those and address those within the presentation. So as I mentioned, please, if you haven't already, please do introduce yourself on that chat function. And as we go through, you can also use it to post questions. I can see that most people do have their microphones muted, which is fantastic. Please do keep them muted as we go throughout the presentation. There may be an opportunity to ask a follow-up question. If you do need to unmute your microphone, you can either do that by holding Control and D, or there is an option if you hover on the bottom of your screen, there is a microphone which you can unmute there as well. Kate's obviously, I'm going to pass over to Kate in just one moment. At the end of the presentation, I will take back over just to say a little bit about Challenge Partners and what we're doing at the moment to support schools. And there will also be a feedback form following this presentation. So please do take the time to fill that out. We really value feedback, and it actually does shape our provision for the future. So yeah, we'd really appreciate that. And without further ado, Kate, I'm going to pass over to you if that's okay. Yeah, so I'll stop presenting.
Okay.
And hopefully.
Yes, hopefully. Right, can you all see that? Because all I can see in this weird thing is the screen. Can you see it, Aziz?
That's great, Kate. Yeah, thank you.
I can't even see myself. So this is very odd. Hi, everybody. I know some of you, which is lovely. And those of you who do know me know this is my idea of hell, actually, because I'd much rather be in a room with people and allowing conversation. So what I'll do is I will stop periodically. Oh, I've just stopped now, haven't I? What's happened there? Hang on. Can you still see it?
That's great, Kate. Yeah.
Okay. I'll stop periodically and you can ask me questions. And I think I'm not quite doing it in the order I said, partly because Gareth from Netley, I don't know if he's here, but Dan certainly is, said, oh, we were really interested to get your insights from Ofsted. So full disclosure, I'm within my first year of qualifying as an Ofsted inspector, and then of course COVID happened, but I had done a few and I'd certainly had training, and it has certainly challenged just about every bone in my body, the training, and I'm surprised I wasn't sacked early on, but I'm hanging on in there. So I can obviously share some of that, okay. But I know what I really enjoyed when I did one of these days last week is actually not thinking about COVID. And actually getting the long view again and thinking about the future and what we need to do next. And so I hope just getting an insight into somebody else's school and brain is helpful. I'm well aware you all have different contexts, and I'll be very explicit about my context so that you can sort of see if it's going to work for you. But I hope I've never done anything through Challenge Partners, a review or a development day or anything, and not taken something away. So let's see if this works. Here we go. A little bit about our context. context then, for those of you who don't know, we have a brilliant local authority, Camden. We have no schools less than good, no primary schools less than good, almost half outstanding. And we work very closely with each other, and haven't yet had any academy change or people opting out of that. However, we're the size of some academy chains. We're a very small local authority. My particular school is by national standards average, by Camden standards posh. So we're about 20% pupil premium, but less than that free school meals. And I think what marks my school out particularly is mix, and inequality is stark. So I have, you know, politicians and actors, and I have 10 LACs, 10 EHCPs, the usual gamut, 37 languages, children with dads incarcerated, everything that you're all dealing with. But somehow in my little tiny one-form entry school, it's all there. However, the dominant culture is most definitely, I would say, middle class. And I know some of you may immediately think, oh, well, what good's this to me then? But I always think it's important to be explicit about that. What it means for me personally is that social class has always been the thing that's interested me and challenged me, because I think that trumps almost every other inequality. As a result, the parents and the children expect a lot of us, and I think that's quite right. We couldn't not be good enough, because I have some very well-informed parents breathing down my neck, and children who expect a lot. The other contextual thing I think is I have been in my school for almost 18 years. I've been in Camden for nearly 40, and I have a very loyal and experienced team. So a lot of what I've been able to do is predicated on those relationships. Something I'm always struck by when I've done challenge partners reviews, or when I've done Ofsted inspections now, is how immediately you get a sense of a school. And I do think it's important to think, how well do we tell our story? Have we got a brand? What does it feel like to be a Barlby child, a Lambton child, a Brindishley child? And I think that's quite important. And I think it's something that we actually do very well. So we don't have a uniform, but the phrase team is terrifically important in our school. And we have an optional sweatshirt, but actually I went round school just yesterday and found lots of children wearing them, and teachers wearing them as well, which is nice. And then we also have something we produced 9 years ago now. We have a manifesto, very much printed in that kind of keep calm and carry on style, which is, I walked into year 6 in 2011 and said, what does Miss Frood go on about? And that is what they said I went on about. And we've got T-shirts and posters and postcards all around the school, and mugs. But actually, I never wanted to change that through everything that's happened in the last 11 years, because I think it captures our mixture of being utterly uncompromising about learning, know your tables, read, but also that critical mindset about take risks, ask questions, look out for each other. So I think those of you who perhaps are new heads or whatever, I think really thinking about how you tell your story, and your website, I'll come to that, is a critical place for that. The other thing I think is really important is, in terms of context, that's the link to a Guardian article. I was interviewed a few years ago. I'm not trying to get a laugh here, nor can I hear your laughs. I can't even see you. But, you know, I learned to teach in the 80s, and all there was the children. There was no Ofsted, SATs, national curriculum, computers, photocopiers, textbooks. There was nothing. There was the class of children in front of you. And I look back and I think, God, how did I do it? But I did it because you taught the children. And I really do worry that generations of younger teachers now who've come after me have taught a curriculum, have taught for Ofsted, have taught for SATs. And I suppose my style of leadership is I go right back to that starting point of how it used to be, really. And a question that we've even asked in an interview is teaching what you do, or is it who you are? And I want teachers for whom it is what they are. And there's a lovely anecdote, I think, in that book called Start With Why. Man's walking down the street and he passes a cathedral being built. And he says to the first stonemason, what are you doing? And the stonemason says, what am I doing? What does it look like I'm doing? I'm working in this awful heat in midday, cementing these bricks. It's back-breaking work. The pay's rubbish. I'm exhausted. So he walks on, gets to the next stonemason, and he says, what are you doing? And the stonemason says, what does it look like I'm doing? I'm playing a small part in building this wonderful cathedral. Imagine my grandchildren will look at this cathedral and say, our grandfather placed bricks in that cathedral. And I think that need to have a sense of where are you heading, that vision, that journey. I worry again that the fragmentation of the curriculum and the insane amount of resources that young teachers now look to online means that we're all working in much smaller bubbles. So know the children, know the curriculum. That's what you're meant to be doing, teaching well first time round and not relying on endless interventions or support teachers or TAs. And then you do it again. You keep on doing it again. So my very small leadership team, me and one other, very critical that we're connected to the classroom. So we both have teaching timetables, Sally in early years, and I teach maths in top juniors. And that's critical to how the school is run, so that I remember what it's like to be in a classroom with Louis or to put up with Leon and to solve the problem of kids forgetting things, even though you told them yesterday, etc., etc. So I think you love learning, you love curriculum, you love teaching. And I think it's important that we are interesting people and we are interested people. And there's the link to the article, should you wish to read it. There you go. So I suppose giving the context of the school and where are we starting from, very active governors, over and above any sort of 1 year action plan, 1 year development plan, sits this vision statement, which is renewed every 3 years. And that very centre bubble says that's what we're trying to do at Eleanor Palmer, to inspire in all pupils a love of learning and the confidence and ambition to achieve highly. And everything we do goes back to that. Now, for your school, it might be a very different starting point, but I think enshrined in that with those 4 sub-aims about inclusion, respect, environment, creativity, leadership, excellence, we encompass that sense of ambition for all children. This is something that I really like as well, and I know Dan's here from Netley, and Bhavani and I have talked about this, because what the middle classes get right is they know that the rules of life isn't just what you know. They know it's not just the suite of qualifications. They know it's who you know, what you do, where you go, who you meet, and your self-esteem. And this is taken from Mick Waters' book, a really good book, I recommend it. And I think that for me, in the way the school runs, is what I think we need to do for all children. In a school like mine, I see so starkly the child who goes to the V&A at the weekend to enhance the topic work. I see the child whose parents rent, watch a whole sequence of Dickens books because we're doing Victorians. And I think it's very much, how do I get that cultural capital? How do I teach all my kids to make eye contact, to shake hands? Do we have enough occasions in our school where visitors come in, strangers, and our children learn how to talk about themselves and their learning? So of course, it's what we know. But I put that up there for you to reflect on, because I think one of the dangers of this new Ofsted framework is it's pushing too many of us just towards a very grad grind concept that it's all about what we know and knowledge, and it's not. And ask any middle class parent, I would sign that slip for the ski trip as soon as it came home, because I knew that that would enrich my child's life experiences. So I think that's a nice starting point as well. Also, a couple of things that I'm sure you're aware of. One is the Sutton Trust Education's Endowment Fund, about what makes a difference. It was a big deal about 8 years ago. But without question, the things that had the biggest impact were the things on the left. So feedback, metacognition, self-regulation, peer tutoring. The things that Scholastic can't make a scheme about. Joy. And also Becky Allen's work, she talks about why the pupil premium isn't working, and that it's deluded to attach it to pots of money for extras. Actually, what makes a difference to our most disadvantaged kids is great teaching in classrooms. And she certainly gave me permission to say, we use our pupil premium money to have more teachers and make sure we get good ones and coach them and that sort of thing. So I know it's not the theme of today, but just because I'm so we're so aware in my school, given our significant minority of disadvantaged kids, that we must do more to diminish that difference. I think I magpie this from maybe Netley or certainly Toriano, but staff awareness of who are those children, and we present it in this way, so you get the complexities of all of that. I think a fairly unrelenting emphasis. I know it sounds obvious that we talk about teaching and learning, but lots of schools don't, in my experience. That's what we go back to all the time as a staff. We have no labelled groups. We don't do set ability groups. Of course, we differentiate, but we don't assign kids an ability. We have very little withdrawal and intervention. If there is a second adult around, they're in the classroom, coaching alongside and being part of that main teaching. Big emphasis on the community and drawing in all the different aspects of the community. And for us, it would be significant minorities would be Bangladeshi and our Black community. So we have a celebrating Black culture night. We have a big Eid lunch. These are minorities for us. For some of you, I know it's a majority. And I manage my middle class parents who are all too ready to tell me how to do my job. And I don't have them in that much, really, because I know what they're like if you give them an inch. So they're all very happy and do their bit, but it's very clear that, we're in charge, and thank you for gifting me with your good idea. Big growth mindset culture, which really goes through. And I think one of the things that is just embedded in all our teaching and learning is this notion of good mistake, and that you only learn when you're making mistakes or you're finding something difficult. Specifically in terms of diminishing difference, we do use some of our pupil premium money to pay our own teachers to be tutors in the spring leading up to SATs for our pupil premium in year 6, literally at 4 o'clock or 4:30 or 5. So the child actually has a tutor, not in school, it's extra, just like the middle class child would be having, and that's been highly effective. And of course we have a fund for all extras. My governors are fierce and they monitor our every move, which I think is right and proper. A silly little thing we do, which has been one of our most successful inclusions, is at the first Friday of every month, parents stay at 9 o'clock. God, how's that going to be with COVID? They stay at 9 o'clock and we play a game, usually a maths game. Very lively, dice, active. It's non-threatening for parents. There's no lecture from the maths leader, and they can really be a part of that. Similarly, we have Shed Talks. That's a play on TED Talks. Again, you don't have to book, you just rock up into a space we have called The Shed, and we do pretty informal talks about everything from phonics to mental health. They've been very popular. Just want to show you, it's such a shame, I hate this, I can't see your faces, but this is an image that I always have ready to share because I think it perhaps captures growth mindset and our ambition for the kids. This is Subair and Hamza in year 2. I don't know if any of you have had the Birdman in, but he's a quite extraordinary maverick character who brings a whole load of birds of prey into school. So here they are in year 2, meeting a bald eagle, American eagle something. And here they are in year 6. We insisted we recreate the photo, but I just love how that picture captures their ease with themselves and their confidence with the bird. And I think it captures what we've tried to do for them. Of course, which 2 boys came back in year 10 to do work experience because they don't have dads who work in advertising or uncles who work at the BBC. So they were amongst quite a lot of ex-pupils who came to do their work experience with us. So we feel very connected to them. Little bit more then about pedagogy, because I think, I know we can't think of anything but COVID at the moment, but this is what you have to have as a school leader. You have to be able to talk to your staff, your young staff, your NQTs about how children learn. And I don't know if that is a Chinese proverb. It may be something else, but we've always thought of a Chinese proverb, and we love that. So I suppose 4 words that would characterize how we try to work is connection, depth, rigor, and creativity. And I'm always saying to staff as I wander around seeing what they're up to, so what? Why are you doing that? Right, okay, so what? Constantly questioning. I do worry that there's a generation of teachers who find somebody else's worksheet on the photocopier and think, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. So really holding people to account that they're thinking and they're articulating what they're teaching and why. And I do actually subscribe to Ofsted's new definition of learning, which is know more and remember more. But what I think it's got huge limitations on is actually you remember what you think about and you remember what you attach meaning to. And that is why I will be very articulate and defensive and passionate about a primary curriculum, because kids do not remember things they are just told once. And I do think our great leaders think it's that simple. So I think we've got to really make sure when we're constructing curriculums that, yes, we absolutely hear the greater ambition for our kids to know more and have more access to knowledge, but how do we construct a curriculum where they actually remember things? And I know that to be true just from things that I've remembered in my life, for sure. So we're constantly thinking, how can we make this stick? How do we make it memorable? And whether that's giving a dice maths game a silly name, or whether it's telling a personal story, or whether it's a trip or a residential or an artist or a music group or a local politician coming in, what do we do to give that learning some stick? I'd also say it's important that your governors understand what's going on, and that your governors, you talk to your governors about pedagogy, so that they can answer questions with Ofsted, because in my experience, they have to, about what is your understanding about the school's vision for teaching and learning. So all of that means that I was feeling quite bullish, actually, about how my school would stack up for Ofsted before it happened, not least because I would be gobby. But actually, I think we've done some really good reflecting, and it's not necessarily, we had work to do. I'm going to pause now because I've suddenly thought you might all have disappeared, and I don't know if you're there. So Aziz, how do I now get it back so I can just see people for 5 minutes?
So there should be an option to stop presenting your slides, Kate.
Google then, haven't I? Okay.
That's
stop
right.
Presenting. Okay. Right. So should I just take, it's so weird. I suddenly thought, oh my God, I don't know if they've all disappeared. Are they all still there? Anybody got any questions? Should I go into, what should I do? Go into chat or anything? Just before I talk about Ofsted?
I think at this stage, there's been no questions as of yet. Like I said, we do have some pre-recorded ones, Kate, okay. But it might be good to go through the next section and then take an opportunity to come back to the group. Okay. Is it all right, everybody? Can you nod if you can see me? Rosie's nodding, Kay Merritt is nodding, that'll do me. Lee Pender is nodding, and Mel is nodding. Okay, I'll go back then, talk a little bit about Ofsted. So I go like that, I go like that, I go like that, and I go like that. Okay. Okay, so whiz through that one. Okay, so let me tell you what I gleaned from Ofsted. This is a massive word in Ofsted, okay? Systemic. It's less about individual parts. You can't rock out your music teacher or your brilliant year 6 teacher and get outstanding. The key word is systemic. So the analogy that works for me, I mean, is you know, you've got a crack in your wall in your sitting room. Yes, you can plaster it over, but the systemic problem might be that you need underpinning. Your teenage child gets spots. Yes, they can buy a multitude of spot creams, but until they drink more water and look at their diet and sleep patterns, you won't sort out the spots. So it's a really good word, and I find it really, really helpful to think about your school in that way. So if you have got a kind of mix of abilities of teachers, you know, what are you doing systemically to bring up the young ones or the less good ones? How are you sharing expertise? So really critically, even if you have 4 subjects in your deep dive, you won't get a report on maths, history, PE and art. If the inspector does it right, and many aren't, your report should talk about the curriculum. So actually, a whole sidebar is that conversation about deep dives is critical with the head to make sure you can slightly manipulate that, I would say. So Ofsted are looking for systemic strengths and weaknesses. Why is history the way it is? Why is history so good? And if you are looking to convert to outstanding, so they come back for that second day, or that they convert, then they're looking to see that DT is as good. And that's where we all kind of panic, isn't it? But it's got to be as good in all subjects to get outstanding. You can't just, you know,
hope you get your 4 good subjects. And then critically, if things aren't great or could be better, it's very much about leadership at the heart. What is it that leaders are doing? What is it that leaders aren't doing? So if your year 4 teacher blows it by doing a rubbish maths lesson, so be it. It'll be the leadership that's responsible to talk about that. So our staff, as I said, our staff supported at different points in their career and in their lives. Do the materials, that instantly sounds like worksheets. Does the intention could be there in all sorts of worthy statements, but the implementation, what the school does to actually deliver that intent, is that good enough? And this constant looking backwards and forwards in the curriculum. And that's really thinking about what we failed to get right in my school at the moment. I think it's that was the thing we weren't doing enough of. And the other big word in the new framework in terms of curriculum is coherence. This notion of component parts. And it's where my skin has crawled listening to some people. Who's that woman who always talks? I can't think of her name. She's everywhere to all the conferences, and she's obsessed with component parts, and she presents this as if it's so simple to teach a 6-year-old. There's just all these bits, and you teach that, then that, then that, then that, then that, and boom, they're doing fine. However, you do need to have given great thought to that careful planning. You have to have a coherent curriculum. So all those bloody folders we get sent from the fire brigade and the dental institute, if they just randomly appear in year 3, that's not coherent. It's got to be thought out and planned, and there has to be connection. And the question that you are asked in those early conversations is how you have thought about. It's back to what I said, and I believe in it. It's why I signed up to do Ofsted, because I thought, hooray, at last. The expectation is on curriculum and not just data and gaming. It's actually about the quality of the provision for the children in your school and the needs of your community. Have you thought about what they need? And I have to say, the cognitive science behind the framework is compelling. The stuff about that you're more likely to remember something if the prior knowledge is there, if that new knowledge can stick to it. So if you launch into a notion of, Hitler in World War II, and previously you looked at, you had done the Romans and you'd looked at democracy, so therefore you were able to talk about a non-democratic system, they're going to remember it. It's no good trying to teach fractions in year 5 if they haven't got a rock solid understanding of times tables. And I really do think that the stuff around, the documents around explaining why they changed the Ofsted framework, all about the curriculum, are really, really worth reading and hard to argue with, actually, that making it stick. Great book by Peps McRae, Cognitive Science. I'd recommend that one for sure. And that constant question, why are you teaching this and why are you teaching it now? Why are you doing World War II in year 6? You're not supposed to be teaching beyond 1066 at primary school. Why are you doing the Greeks in Key Stage 1? Doesn't matter. There's no law that says you can't, but you have to be able to say why and be compelling in that argument. And what does doing this now enable the children to do next? And why are the children so successful in their understanding of the Amazon in year 5? Oh, that's because I can see that you've done work on the globe and mapping and zones earlier on in their time. Now, this is something I'm happy to send you, but I'm not going to do it via Challenge Partners. You may have seen it. You shouldn't have seen it. But I've realised now, a year in, that lots of Ofsted inspectors share the training. And this is a couple of pages that we were given as inspectors about how that we're meant to look at the curriculum in a school. So I'll send it to you. It's quite handy. This is all these kind of questions about curriculum on one side. And it's very secondary in its creation, I think. So that's lots of questions that you look at in terms of curriculum. And you also look at pedagogy, assessment, culture, systems, and policy. Now, of course, you can't possibly get through all those questions in a 10-minute interview with the subject leader, but we found as a staff, it helped my leaders, my newly appointed DT leader, to get their head around, what do I need to be able to think about? What do I need to be able to talk about? So I'm happy to send that if you want it after directly, if you email me. And then we've all been given, as Ofsted inspectors, this neat little acronym for writing the last section of the report, which is the bit, the kind of even better if section is what challenge partners would call it. And so the SIF goes, I can remember it, but I'll put it up. So, you know, we've been to your school, you're doing really well. It's not so much what is wrong, it's what could be better. What's the systemic issue that means this isn't working? So, for example, one of the reviews that I did, inspections that I did, the writing at Key Stage 2 was very limited, very unimaginative, and the systemic issue was the school only really taught through limited reading scheme books at Key Stage 1, very, very heavily weighted. There wasn't enough emphasis on literature. The children were not having a story at story time. They were not being exposed to a rich and diverse vocabulary. It was very much copy this example on the board type teaching. So that that was what was not working. But the systemic issue was the lack of thought given to literature and developing this very deprived community language and vocabulary. So what is wrong? Why this matters? What's the impact of this thing, and what needs fixing? So actually, I found that quite handy. And so, I mean, a classic one for us all at the moment would be the Black Lives Matter, wouldn't it? And I think that's quite a nice way to look at yourselves and your staff and your school, and perhaps address that in the year ahead. So what do I think is positive about the new Ofsted framework? There is some things, I think. As I said, of course, you know, I was amazed when it first hit. Lots of heads were complaining that they wished their curriculum leader had come on this meeting Camden was holding. And I'm like, aren't you the curriculum leader? You're the head teacher. And I do think as head and as deputy, you don't need an assistant head in charge of curriculum. It should be you. And it should be that you as a leadership team share that really common way we do things at our school. So I think that's a positive. I think it's made everybody dig out the national curriculum, dust it off, and remind ourselves that that's our job, and perhaps lose that fragmented approach to leadership. So that's why I signed up, so that we got away from this head who was smooth with a nice set of statistics that had been slightly, you know, falsely produced, and they could get an outstanding. I love the ambition. I like the ambition for all children, and I like the fact that there is an ambition beyond the academic, and a real emphasis on how do you enrich, what cultural experiences, careers, life chances, that kind of thing. And I really do agree that we need more knowledge-rich curriculum. On my travels, I have seen some incredibly patronising work with teachers with incredibly low expectations for what kids are capable of learning about. My own daughter, you know, has mixed experience at primary, much better now, Mel, I can assure you. You know, she'd do the Victorians and she'd do 2 worksheets colouring a picture of Queen Victoria and then say she'd finished. No looking at the Great Exhibition or cholera or whether the Victorians, whether empire was a good thing, you know, really not going deep. And I think we need to expect more. And we know, don't we, that knowledge is power, and Britain is constructed on inequality. And I think we need to make sure more kids have access to knowledge. Yeah, I know Twinkle has some good things. My teachers constantly tell me when I get cross, but I do worry that there's so many worksheets out there now and so many websites, and we have to watch the children. You know, we have to really assert what real learning, connected learning looks like, and deep learning looks like. And I like the question. One of the key questions we're asked to ask when we, as we go through those 2 days of inspection is, what's it like to be a child at this school? Good question to ask your staff and each other. What's it like? Does every child, what's it like? What's it like? In my school, our big question we constantly ask ourselves is, what's it like to be a free school meal child at this school? Do you constantly feel less worthy. You know, we really, really try to militate against that feeling. What's it like to be a black child at this school? What's it like actually to be a bright child at this school? What's it like to be in the minority of ambitious, well-supported children? You know, think of all your children. What's it like? And does it feel like a school where everyone is valued and included? So those are all the positives. Negatives, and this is negative having signed up. I have been on inspections where colleagues in the team have literally said to a child, when did the Romans invade Britain? And when the year 4 child can't answer, there's a line of inquiry that the teaching of history is poor. And we have got to not allow that to happen, and not allow our curriculum to be reduced to a few pub quiz questions in corridors or in lessons. That said, in one of the schools I went into, we had an emerging line of inquiry that the children had no sense of how history connected. And as we went round the classes, and we realised that there was no sense of chronology at all in any of the classes or of connections. So, but, you know, we've got to be careful. The majority of inspectors that I've sat with and worked with are secondary trained. And some haven't been in the school as well as being secondary for quite a number of years. They've got no sense of what a well thought out, rigorous primary curriculum looks like, or how primary pupils learn best. And a classic line from my shadow inspection, I got told off by the team because she said, "Leave your head teacher hat at home. You're not here as a head teacher." And I said, I thought I exactly was here as a head teacher, to balance the perspectives of those of you who, with respect, aren't head teachers, as I leapt to the school's defence. So I do think you need to be very ready to articulate what a primary curriculum looks like, because there's a huge pressure and an easy option, I think, just to create a secondary experience and to put subjects, just to do subjects from reception. And then you've got evidence, and you can show progress in your geography book, and all those things that might be valid in your schools. But I feel more passionate about primary curriculum. Many of you may know and admire, and I do admire Claire Seeley very much, but she became very in vogue because she was so rude about topic work at primary schools, particularly, which got very picked up on by government. And she had one anecdote I always heard her talk about, how children do the Romans, which means they dress up as a Roman and make a Roman road out of cat litter. And they don't know a thing about the Romans or the invasions or the legacy. And that exact example was quoted on my Ofsted training. So I was kind of very vocal and disagreed, and said that there was much high quality stuff going on in our schools. And they listened. But for the rest of that day, they kept turning to me and saying, "Don't worry, Kate, you can have your toga." And I just feel that there is a very deficit view of a lot of primary curriculum. And if I'm honest, that's because there's a lot of shoddy topic work that goes on. So if you're going to hang on to a topic approach, you have to do it well, because there's a lot of people there who'll be looking to belittle what we do. I think there's a huge limitation of know more and remember more. I think it can lead to a very sort of, I've told you tick, you've learnt it. And God, don't we all know that's not what happens, especially not now. You've also got that big debate, which I think is a very valid one, about who defines what is knowledge, who says what is important. You know, very, very live with Black Lives Matters. If you're watching the Black and British programme on the telly at the moment, you know, it's so easy to teach the Romans, the Victorians, the Tudors from that very empire-based perspective. And there's nothing in the national curriculum to balance that. The right thing to do for your community might be to change that. And I think it can be a very reductive model of learning. I have seen there are schemes out there with a sheet about continents, and at the bottom, the child ticks, "I now know more and remember more about continents." And I can see that that's the quick fix, but it upsets me, and it upsets everything that I believe in. So, you know, that's what I think, that's what scares me. And as an example, actually, a school that I inspected that was outstanding, and it really was, the one thing that let them down at one point was they'd gone out and bought an art scheme, and all over the walls was this glorious art from the previous term. And yet we watched two really dry, rubbing leaves or something from a scheme of art. And we sort of challenged the school and said, why are you doing that when you've got this fantastic Where the Wild Things Are puppetry on the wall? And they said that the teachers thought they weren't doing enough progression in art, so they wanted to have a scheme. So it was interesting, giving them the confidence actually to do what they were doing well and the links they were making. Right, I really am going to stop now, Aziz, because I'm going to talk about our school now. So I'm just going to stop and see if anybody wants to ask anything about Ofsted or any more things.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. And it'd be nice to give you a break for a minute or two just there. Just to reiterate, yeah, if anyone would like to ask a question or has any thoughts, then like I said, please do use that chat function.
If not, I'll plow on, but I did just want to stop.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. And Kate, you mentioned you're going to talk about the specifics of your school.
Yeah, I'm going to do that now. Yep. Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go. Right. Okay, so here we go. This is a classic thing, isn't it, that you've probably all got in some way, shape or form on your website, and that is what we have on our website. But what I really want to talk to you about is what all that layers beneath it and then where we got to. So that is a very classic, mockable primary curriculum. And that is on our website. And it looks different every year, and I'm lucky to have a parent who's an illustrator and who does it for me every year.
Kate, do you think we can see anything at the moment? Because we can't. Do you think?
No, you're joking, Dan. You're joking.
No, I'm not.
Gone wrong? Ah, right. Why can't you see it? Let me go back. Dan, thank you for saying that. Share. I didn't press share. Now I go to that. Now I go. Is that better? Can you see it now? Can you see that?
That's great.
Yeah. Phew. Thanks, Dan. Okay, there you go. Classic primary school. Looking very nice, because I'm lucky to have a parent who's done some drawings for me. So underneath that, our big phrase is autonomy within a framework. Now, look, some of you are in 3 form entry schools, 2 form entry schools. It may be very different. The wonderful joy of a 1 form entry school is you don't have to plan with anybody or do what somebody else is doing or do the same as the other teacher because the parents will complain. But there's huge autonomy, but there has to be within a framework. So autonomy within a framework, and one of my rather cliched, snotty-nosed head teacher things I say is, you have the freedom to succeed, you don't have the freedom to fail. So lots of monitoring of planning, 2-hour meetings with me termly about how you're going to bring those topics to life. And the more experienced and confidence I have in a teacher, the less I would expect of them. Also, I think when you're thinking about your teachers, there's lots of fantastic books out there about what matters in the workplace. And again and again and again, people in all sorts of workplaces, what they want from their workplace is autonomy. They want to feel that they're learning. They want to feel that the efforts they make reaps rewards, and it was not linked to pay, and they want a sense of belonging. And I do think the biggest reason teachers leave is that sense of lack of agency and control. And that's coming from government very much so, but it's also coming from head teachers if you don't give teachers the head. So a big emphasis on my school is professional freedom and integrity. So underneath that cutesy little thing, we do 3 topics a year. One has got to be history-led. The knowledge that drives the topic comes from history. The next term, one of the terms has to be geography-led, one has to be science-led. Underneath that drawing, and this is only 2 pages of about an 8-page document, I can't put it all up, we have what we call a horizontal. So it's added to every year. What we do is we've taken the national curriculum, and this is pre-Ofsted days, we've taken the national curriculum and we've put things where we think they need to be. And you are told over the year, you have to do all those things. If you choose to link myths and legends with your topics about ancient Greeks, that's a good idea. If you choose to link instructions with around the world in 80 days, you decide what links well with where. And then we have a page at the end where we always review every year which topics worked well to cover that content, what were great visits, what were great novels. So as new teachers join our school, their starting point horizontally for their year group is this cumulative wealth of, I've got to cover this, but a sense of freedom to create topics, okay? So then what teachers give me, and this is again a snip of a much longer document, they give me at the start of a term a very long document. Now, some of you may be saying, I'm out, I'm into protecting workload for teachers. You know, I know leadership teams often just give teachers curriculums. I have found in my experience that if you give teachers that freedom to create that sense of ownership, they own the curriculum, the passion is there. So a huge piece of work for them, building up a topic. And this is, I say, just 1 or 2 pages that Rosie's put together for her topic. But they give me no weekly plans. I see nothing after this. And I will sit down and discuss this with each teacher at the start of the term. Literacy will link. And a big starting point for me in literacy is always purpose and audience. Who's this for? Why are you doing it? And where there are natural links with the overarching topic, we'll do one. So biography, obviously, for Queen Victoria. Where there aren't, we don't. And where there are cross-curricular links, so lovely Victorians, William Morris, Lowry, lots of cross-curricular art, but in science, there isn't naturally in this topic, that will stand alone. Of course, these are all on our shared drive, and nobody starts with a blank sheet of paper. You know, my teachers are all moving year groups next year. Their starting point will be to dig out predecessors' long-term plans. So those then sit underneath. Then something that we did when we got wind of the new Ofsted framework, these are commonly known as knowledge organisers, but I didn't want to call them that, call me contrary. So we came up with a memorable title, which they're called EP Collectibles, because we know how much kids like to collect things. So for every topic now, at the start of the topic, about 2 weeks in, when we've whet their appetite, we send, this is double-sided, I've given you both sides, we send home our collectible. And again, they don't live in an office, the teachers create them based on what they're going to do. And specifically here, you can see Empire, you know, we changed it last year because we had a sense of that need. This goes home with the children. There's lots of laminated copies in school. Parents put it on the fridge, but kids I know are collecting them just like they collect football cards. And there's lots of complaints about this term because they're not getting them with COVID and things, but they are. And we have a quiz at the end of term about this sort of thing. And also it holds teachers to account on, you know, you need to teach this stuff. You need to go deep. Kids need to understand these words. Those are really nice. So that's where we'd got to. And there's an example of a year one, because I think year one also, I think, again, infants particularly can be very patronised with the depth of knowledge that they go into. And parents have told us they find this really helpful. Interestingly, teachers were resistant to begin with because they said, oh, then they'll know what we're going to do in our topic and they'll know all the facts already. But in fact, it's been really nice. And they've been very useful when governors have talked to children, and our school improvement partner has as well. So that's kind of where we got to. So we were feeling good. We thought we have a rigorous curriculum. It has depth. Knowledge is very central. And we're ambitious for the children. We have a policy of at least 3 trips a term. We have 4 residentials. We have endless visitors, artists, people coming into school. And then we realised what we hadn't got right and what we weren't doing. And it was helped by me having that perhaps heads up by doing Ofsted training. So we had this very clear horizontal framework where, as the year 4 teacher, you knew what you had to teach. You knew it was up to you to weave it together. And I think in a 2-form entry school, I guess you would do that together. What we hadn't got right, we suddenly realised, was we hadn't got right our vertical. What does it look like? You know, what's it like to be a geographer at Eleanor Palmer? What's it like to be a historian? By the end of year 6, have you got a really strong, well-cemented understanding of what geography is? And not just facts, but what being a geographer is and the implications for our environment in the future. And so just because that's what we do, isn't it? We coined this phrase vertical. And the work that we did last September in anticipation of Ofsted coming back was really focusing on that notion of that journey through the school. And we went back to the national curriculum because that's not been looked at, has it? And we went right back to our horizontal, our framework, our plan, and made sure that people really understood it. And we had that conversation about what's it like? What does it look like literally in nursery? What history do we do in nursery? How do we build upon that in the next year? What sits well where and why? and really good sort of discussions and arguments between teachers about, yeah, I know it says you're meant to do that in year 4 in the national curriculum, but it sits so well in year 3 with my topic on this and all of that. And we tried to capture our intention and our ambition for that subject area. And what's our end goal? And again, back to my sort of slight criticism of lots of young teachers now, you know, why are you doing that Simpsons worksheet on the passive voice from Twinkle? That's actually an example that I saw a few years ago, and I was really struggling to understand what passive voice was through this lesson, and not being a literacy specialist anymore, and the children certainly were. Went back to my Rosie and said, how do you teach passive voice? And she was like, oh, when we do World War II, we look at propaganda. Boom, suddenly understood it, and as did the children. So really being clear about why you're teaching this now and how does it fit in. And how do we enrich that curriculum content? Really wanting to hang on to a defining feature of our school that we're very big about, enrichment. So what we did was literally, we did hands up who wants to be, because in a one form entry, there's no money to be geography lead. So literally people volunteered and everybody took on an area. We had lots and lots of staff meetings where we laid out our horizontals, you know, why this, why now, and each coordinator kind of went round and took out the bit from each year group. And within that bit, what was key? So, for example, the word empire, you'd be learning in Romans. When you meet it again in Victorians, civilization in the Greeks, you know, are we a civilized society? What's the key conceptual learning? Having done that, we sort of, don't forget I had questions, and I'm happy to share. I've got kind of Ofsted questions. We did dummy interviews with each other, and that was kind of giggling and not knowing what to say, particularly around assessment. Still don't think we know what to say about assessment in DT. Then we did it with our school improvement partner, and then we did it with the governor. So, and actually for a lot of young staff, it was very much about telling their story and having the confidence. And just so you're all aware, you know, you can sit in as a school leader, you can sit in with any coordinator. There's no way a nervous RQT geography lead should be having an interview on their own. So that was really helpful. And the more people told their story and the more they got a bit of a script and a bit of a line, and we had prompts for our own school, the more comfy people felt. And for each subject, we tried to capture in just one paragraph what is the teaching of this subject like at our school, and what do we want the year 6s to look like by the time they leave us. So I'll give you a moment just to read that, just say for geography. Okay, so that answered to me the why and the why you're doing this and what's the end point. And then teachers literally drew on bits of paper, they captured, just so you think, I mean, look at that, look how different that is. How much am I revealing to you that DT is our weak spot? We had all the discussions, and universally teachers said, oh, that's the one I don't feel as confident in. So we made the decision that for DT, now, as a starting point, we would use the DT association scheme so that people felt they were covering it. But hopefully in time, as with other subjects, we'll wean off that. So clearly that's not as strong, but I think we could evidence that we're applying the same way of systemic way of building it and improving it, should they come. Then what we did was, this has been made to look nice, but we just took our topic, because we want to stay true to that topic-based curriculum, how the topic is drawn from national curriculum. We're not just sitting there with an old bubble diagram going, oh, why don't you do such and such? It's actually based on what they're meant to do. And then we drew out what is the key learning. Okay, you can have all these grannies and grandpas in, you can have different people. What do we want them to understand in nursery? We want to understand about their own lifetime. And then how do we enrich that? And we created what we just called a vertical, because that's what it's doing. It's moving through the school showing always what's the national curriculum, what's the key learning, what's the enrichment, right up to, and then into year 3 and year 4, and into 5 and 6. And we've done these verticals for each subject. So I'm not going to put them all up. It would obviously be a little boring for you, but just to show. Oh, and also a great thing we did. I don't know we have a history timeline in the playground. We did about 5 years ago, so that's great for chronology. Although now I'm thinking it's too ethnocentric, but anyway, it's lovely and it goes all around the playground. So we always start every history topic by children going to stand on the timeline. So they've got chronology nailed. Geography looks very different because obviously it's geography, but it's still the same principles. If you look at it, you've got brown is what are they meant to know. Green is what's the key geographical learning, and then we've got enrichment again, and it moves on like that. So that's early years in Key Stage 1. You've got your same heading saying, what are we going to try and do? And there we go into Key Stage 2. And you've got your what do we want them to look like as geographers at the end of that. Okay. So that's sort of, that's really a walk through what we've done and where we got to. And I don't know where you're at, you may be miles ahead of me, but it was really that notion of vertical. And I would say with my Ofsted hat on that when your geography leader is talking, they need to have that they need to know what's happening in other classes. I also said I'd reference God, the horrors of now, and see if you agree with me. And then I've got some top tips for you at the end, nearly finished, about 4 more slides. So this is from lockdown from us. I mean, we have in my school, maybe it's because of how we work normally, we have universally disliked remote learning, found it incredibly unrewarding, but we have tried to be positive. We've looked at what's worked, and of course what has worked probably is things like Times Table Rockstars, which are very rote and quite closed. But the lack of talk around activities has been quite agonizing at home. I'd say a good thing that's come out of it for us, teachers have had to think harder about small steps because there's only one chance to explain something. And one of the teachers said, I teach now as if I can't, because I won't repeat it. So in the explanations they've given, we've actually it's going to stop because hopefully we're going to get the other year groups in. But we've just started to do a little bit more live teaching because of that need to have chat and talk, which is so woefully missing from Google Classrooms or whatever. Interestingly, children have told us they like choosing the order in which to do things. And I know one of you asked a question about continuous provision in Key Stage 2. And actually, I like that in the afternoons where kids have got 3 things they've got to complete or whatever. But that's interesting. That's something they liked about Google Classrooms, planning their own day. One of the teachers said it's really helping now, having them in, having stuff for them to look at the night before the lessons. That's been really good. Lots of games since we're back in maths, just to get some energy back into those tiny rooms, lots of dice rolling and laughter. And of course, getting their memory back on those core facts. As I keep saying, we've missed discussion. The children really enjoyed it when we set work where they could pursue their own interests. And I don't think in the 21st century, the system allows us to do enough of that. God, in the 80s, that's all we did. It was so much freer. Some children have definitely thrived without the dominant few. And I think we have to hear that, just how some children dominate in the classroom. And the limitations of worksheet, managing key workers and things over Easter, doing the Google Classroom that my lovely colleagues had set. You just realise the limitations of not being with the children. I was able to go, stop, don't do question 7. No, stop, it's too hard for you. But of course, that parent at home couldn't do that and was just thinking their child wasn't bright enough. So I found that very limiting. Interestingly, year 6, we did a little Wordle when they got back. We asked them to write on the computer 3 things that they've missed. Just to say, I actually feel quite fed up at the moment because I don't know how our curriculum works if this goes on, because there will be no trips, there will be no visitors. We have not got enough time if we're doing half weeks or half days or every other week to cover the broad curriculum. So haven't got time for that today. Look, we asked year 6, what have you missed? And I really like them. The more children that typed a word, the bigger it is. I'm sure you know how these work. And of course, if you look at Friends, written in different ways. Friends is the dominant one. But I was pleased that they've missed explanations, teachers explaining, working with someone else. I thought that was nice. Okay, last 2 slides, some top tips, then we've got time for questions. I'm on time, I think. So your website is key. Now, I don't know, Aziz, how I now move to show my website. How do I do that? Can I just scroll across? Ooh, can I? Oh, I think I can. Hang on.
You can, Kate. Yeah, that's...
Like scroll across, go like, oh no, hang on. Bear with me, people. No, I can't find it. Oh, it's there and then it's gone. Oh, how do I, there we are. Okay, got it. So if I go like that, how do you now see, can you see my screen now?
We can indeed, yeah.
Okay, so it's obviously I can't go through this now, but one of the best things that I was told was your website is just your window, and really, really clear, everybody. Ofsted do not inspect compliance. You do not need to spend hours checking you've got your handling policy up to date. What they are looking for is culture. And the very first thing that your Ofsted inspector will spend 2 or 3 hours on that Sunday is your website. Does it communicate a culture? Is it up to date? If they click on newsletter and it says November 2017, that's a line of inquiry. Why isn't the school up to date? And also, I won't do it now, but in curriculum, you can not gaming, that's cynical, but it is slightly gaming. So a bit of gaming from me. We have a long-held philosophy. I haven't just done this, mate, because you're coming. Look at our 1,000 posts on our website to see multiple examples of our rich and challenging curriculum. Being very clear that actually we're not just about having a lovely time at Hampton Court. We're about raising standards in core subjects. If you go into our curriculum, that statement very early on and very boldly, our curriculum is based on the national curriculum. I think that's important. And then having all those key phrases. Anyway, I'll let you look at it. If I now go back to that one, do I see my slides again? Yes, I do. Ha-ha. Okay, have a look at it anyway, because I do think we've done quite a bit of work on our website, and I cannot stress enough, I'd say 3 hours you spend on a Sunday on a school's website. And if you want to know the name of the guy who's done a lot of websites in Camden, he's brilliant, and he taught me so much about marketing. For example, every time you go on a website, it should look different. If it always looks the same, and on our one, you can just roll, pictures just automatically change, things like that, very good. If at the moment you've got a link that says curriculum, and when you click on it, you get a Word document, a table that just says Year 1, Autumn, Our Wonderful Body, Year 2, Spring, The Romans, and there's nothing underneath that, that will raise alarm bells. And I was quite surprised that the most recent one I did, that's all they presented us for their curriculum. I'm utterly with the school that has those as their topic headlines. We have to be better than that now. We have to have that thought out documents underneath. That phrase is important. What's coming through, not in my personal experience, but in the sort of touch base days we have as inspectors, is how many schools go, oh yes, no, the children love history, we go to Sutton Hoo in the summer. And somehow history is enshrined in a trip. You've got to say, why are you going on that trip? Do you go at the start of a topic to engender questions? Do you go at the end so children have a sense of pride in how much they know? But you've got to, if you're going to have an ambitious trip program or visitors, you've got to know why. You can't just argue for happiness and experiences. You really have to be more confident about knowledge. And again, with teachers, yes, it's lovely that you've made slime this afternoon. I can see you've had a great time. Why? And what is slime and why does it come out like that? Just constantly. So what? Best question in education. Another one where we fell down, even just with our governors, so it's a good one, is the children, the governor's saying to a group of children, they do lots of focus group with kids. And what geography have you learned in year 5? None. No, don't think we've done geography. Then somebody cued them about doing the Amazon, and they knew about everything geographical. And the points forward for us was, tell them it's geography. Yes, you're doing the Amazon or whatever, but you're doing geography, you're doing physics, you're doing chemistry. It's important. And then I think, again, call it gaming, but, very, very explicitly at the start of a topic, we're very explicitly telling the children, do you remember when you did the Romans? What was that word that meant how a society constructs itself? Give me an example from the Romans where, you know, we're really making those connections. And of course, with each learning, with each lesson as well. But I think as teacher, you have to guide the kids to make those. The Claire Seeley thing she condemns us all with, and many right-wingers around her, is don't say we're doing the Romans, say we're learning about the Romans. And yeah, assert your curriculum, be proud to be primary. You could be inspected by 2 secondary people who haven't been in a school for 5 years. So you need to articulate what is distinct about being primary without falling in the trap of making out that it's just cuddles and painting. The other thing I think is a leadership lesson broader than this. And I'd say this as an old bag. It's very easy as a young head to be distracted by what you think everybody else is doing. Or somebody sharing a good idea and not holding firm to what you've trying to do. So I tend to think, don't be distracted by a good idea. And clarity, really. And actually, if you can, even if it involves you, and it did at my school, I gave my governors a lecture on our pedagogy, and I gave them a script, prompt document, so they could really, because they knew it, they're living it, they're experiencing it, but they couldn't articulate it because they're not teachers. So that is me. I am done. And I'll stop sharing now, but just to say, Aziz will share the slides as a PDF, but if there's anything I've said that you want a copy of, I would much rather do it directly from me, because I probably shouldn't have challenge partners distribute things that have come from Ofsted. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going, okay.
Thank you so much, Kate. That was fantastic. And we've had a few questions come through whilst you were talking then, and a couple relating to your collectibles that you talked about. And I think it was Donna has asked, you know, is it the teachers or actually the senior leadership team that define what goes into those collectibles?
Well, therein lies the tale, doesn't it? It's the teachers, because otherwise they don't own it. But they absolutely go past me, and I give them back and I say, not enough about this, that's contradictory, that's a repeat, that's a spelling mistake, you haven't even mentioned this. So, you know, it's they create them, and we, before they go out, we say if they're good enough. So there's quite a bit of toing and froing. But that, for a leadership team to create it, to give it to a teacher, you're immediately taking away that sense of ownership and agency, I would say. Mm.
And then Phyllis also asked, is it possible to either, you know, explain or show how the pedagogy you mentioned ties in with the collectibles? Is that part of your wider kind of curriculum focus?
I'm not quite sure what that means. I mean, the collectible is a document is given out that says to the children, this is what's going to frame our term. Some of you might want to go home and learn it all already. Some of you might want to wait. It doesn't in any way pop up at the start of every lesson. As I said, there's a few laminated round in the room. There's one that sort of hangs by the door, you know, with a little thingy. But what it's saying to the children and to the teacher is knowledge frames what you're teaching. And we're going to go back to that. And yes, you've done a lovely painting of Queen Victoria. And then I'll say to Samaya, is Queen Victoria the one who had no children? Or was that the one who had lots of children? Do you know what? One of the skills of leadership that you ever get trained in is playing dim. The way in which I check the kids have learned stuff more than any other over lunches, I go, what do you mean the Antarctic's a desert? No, it's not. A desert's hot. No, it's not, Miss Frood. Deserts have low rainfall, actually. So that's a great way. So if I know what they ought to know, then I can sort of talk about it a lot, I suppose.
That's great. And there was also a question from Jennifer about what platform you use for live teaching. You mentioned that was something.
I'm afraid we just use Zoom. And literally it's been a bit like this. And it's not, please don't get me wrong, we're not doing 1 hour long lessons 3 times a day. We're just now, as it comes to an end, because we're hoping to get our kids back next Monday, the other year groups. We're just doing each teacher's just committing to do one so far. And we're using Zoom, which I know some local authorities disapprove of, but it's working for us and it works for parents. Actually, we try, you know, the more Microsoft Teamy ones, it's asking too much of parents.
Thank you. And one of the pre-submitted questions that I just wanted to touch on, Kate, if that's okay, was just around, I guess, the increased workload for staff, or what the impact on your staff cohort had been in terms of workload.
Well, the thing is, this is so interesting, isn't it? And one of the debates that I'd love to have, and genuinely, is, you know, what size school is best to work in? Is a standalone school better or worse than an academy? I should say, we tend to attract teachers who are happy to work a bit harder as a payoff for having that autonomy and creativity. I am very, very clear that if I moved to a 3-form entry school, that I'd have to rethink some of how we work in order to get that consistency. I'm an old bag, okay? Some of you may be a very different generation who feel very, very protective of workload. I have actually said in a DFE working party I've been on about workload, 13 weeks paid holiday. Sorry, I just think, you know, teachers get, and you know, we've just been on full pay for the last 3 months, unlike my partner, who certainly has earned nothing. So I'm a bit bloody, I'm afraid, and you may disagree with me and say this is way too much work. I would say the benefits for me is high staff retention, exceptional staff happiness, because they have that sense of ownership over what they're teaching and trust. But I do accept it's definitely hard work, and they do long days. Well, I can't hear you, Aziz, sorry.
My microphone was muted. I'll just say thank you, Kate. That's great. And I'll just give people an opportunity, if they do have any other questions or queries, to pop that in the chat. Just quickly before we do finish, I just wanted to just talk a little bit more about what we're doing here at Challenge Partners currently. So for those of you who are members of our Network of Excellence or have been involved with us previously, you know that our partnership year has been pushed back to the start of September. So if your school has not renewed, then there is still an opportunity to do so. If you are not a member of Challenge Partners to date, like I said, you can still sign up right up until the end of this summer term, onboarding schools, and you know what we're doing at the moment to support schools in our network really is, first of all, primarily, you know, getting schools collaborating with their local area hubs. So Kate, you're obviously our senior partner for our Camden hub, and we've got about 44 hubs right across the country. So we're getting schools to kind of collaborate on that local level, and doing our best to kind of mobilize that knowledge and the kind of best practice that is currently happening in schools. Some of the ways that we've been doing that is obviously through our online resources. So our leadership development days are kind of one aspect of that, and we do have some more virtual seminars coming up, so please do check that out on our website is challengepartners.org. We also kind of collating, like I said, that best practice, and we've got some amazing webinars from the Behavioural Insights team, Mark Rowland talking about the best ways to support disadvantaged pupils. So there really is a wide range of kind of resources online.
Can I just butt in, Aziz, just to say to everybody, it's a fantastic organisation. If some of you are here because you're thinking of joining, what it's given us is that of getting out of our echo chamber. If you're in a small trust or in a local authority, it's been fantastic to go to Blackpool, to go to Manchester, to go to Cornwall. And actually now this kind of virtual knowledge exchange has been fantastic. And it's been one of the seminal moments in developing us as a school, for sure. Sorry, bit of a fanzine there. Stop now.
No, thank you, Kate. And you know, we are we've taken this opportunity to really try and utilize the kind of virtual aspect of this. I think we always say, you know, schools can be quite slow to catch up with kind of technological advances, and I know it's kind of turbocharged a lot of those preparations. So you know, we've been seeing what we can do virtually, and very much the autumn term we're going to spend a lot of the time doing online training and getting our local area hubs collaborating to hopefully start our kind of quality assurance reviews again in the new calendar year, so from January 2021. Just to leave you, if you would like to follow up, find out any more information about our Network of Excellence, how you can get involved, renewing your subscription, then you can visit our website. Or you can email me directly. You should have my contact details from the invites to this event, and we can pick up those discussions. I will be this session has been recorded, so there will be a video hosted on our website as well. And as Kate mentioned, very kindly going to share those slides in a PDF format. If you would like to pick up any discussions with Kate directly. Her email address, as she put, is on that last slide. So so yeah, we'll be sending those to you directly shortly. But thank you very much, everyone, for your time today. I'm just going to go back to see if there's any questions. No, there isn't. And Kate, just to say thank you very much for your time. Yeah, really, really interesting, and thank you for sharing that information.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your days.